de 28 atracciones que ustedes van a tener la oportunidad de disfrutar en ese parque. Es como si estuviéramos caminando por la Biblia. Vamos a tener la oportunidad de entrar al tabernáculo del desierto con el sumo sacerdote. Podrán entrar también a las cuevas del Corán, participar de la última cena, ir al escritorium, que es una atracción que dura 55 minutos y los va transportando de sala en sala desde los comienzos de las primeras escrituras y cómo estas fueron pasando de generación en generación hasta la actualidad. Ahí van a ver todo lo que le sucedió a los hombres que por tal de preservar la Biblia para las futuras generaciones, muchos dieron la vida por ella y otros fueron hechos prisioneros. También van a tener la oportunidad de ver la escenificación por actores profesionales de la crucifixión, muerte y resurrección de Jesucristo. Eso va a tener lugar a las 4 de la tarde. Ojo, muy importante. Tienen el resto del día para ver las demás atracciones. Cuando lleguemos al parque les vamos a entregar una guía con los respectivos horarios de cada una de las atracciones. Pero esta de la crucifixión, muerte y resurrección de Jesucristo es una sola vez a las 4 de la tarde. Por eso les digo que se planifiquen para que en ese horario no tengan absolutamente nada, porque cuando se cierran las puertas del Coliseo no van a poder entrar. Las demás, todo el día se están realizando, muchas de ellas cada 15 minutos. Entonces, a las 4, la pasión de Jesús, es como se llama esta atracción. Van a también poder apreciar la maqueta bajo techo más grande que existe de la antigua ciudad de Jerusalén, que está en este parque de Orlando. Hay tiendas donde pueden comprar artículos y todo Holy Land está engalanado con el ambiente navideño. Esta es una de las fechas muy propicias para viajar a este lugar por las características. Tiene miles y miles de luces y cientos de árboles de Navidad de diferentes formas, de diferentes colores y con diferentes tipos de adornos. Eso es básicamente lo que vamos a ver. Hay un área para niños que ustedes pueden visitar. Se sonríe porque todos llevamos siempre algo de niño. Ahí van a poder ver el arca de Noé. Van a poder ver también a Jonás y a la ballena y muchas atracciones más que son propiamente destinadas para los niños, pero ustedes la miran y en futuras excursiones pueden traer a algún niño de su familia, porque también hay espacio para ellos en este parque. Está concebida para los adultos y para los pequeños. Otra cosa muy importante, pueden entrar a la tumba del Calvario. Es una réplica donde fue puesto el cuerpo de Jesús cuando fue crucificado. También van a ver o van a poder subirse hacia una réplica de la montaña donde él fue crucificado y van a ver la cruz donde supuestamente fue crucificado Jesús. Ahí antes en ese lugar se hacía la escenificación de la crucifixión y muerte y resurrección de Jesucristo, pero el lugar quedaba pequeño, por eso se construyó un coliseo con capacidad de más de 4.000 personas para que pudieran entonces apreciar la escenificación, porque antes había que hacerla en 2 horarios, porque no cabían las personas en ese recinto. Eso es básicamente lo que vamos a ver. Antes de llegar, les vamos a entregar sus respectivos tickets. Consérvenlo porque pueden salir y entrar, pero siempre con el mismo ticket. Porque cuando lleguemos, ustedes van a quedar impresionados por toda la cantidad de animales, el nacimiento que hay a la entrada, caballos, elefantes de todo tipo de especies, jirafas. Y entonces les aconsejo, entren, después salen, se toman la foto para que vayan ganando tiempo y disfrutando de las atracciones.
Estamos aquí en Orlando, Florida.
Miren, ese es el coliseo donde se va a escenificar la crucifixión, muerte y resurrección de Jesucristo. Ven que es lo último que está en el parque, es la última atracción, está al final. Ya le vamos a entregar en breve los tickets para que ustedes no se bajen. Exactamente. Entonces, vayan mirando desde aquí. ¿Ven? Se pueden tomar fotos afuera. Ven, el coliseo se ve imponente al final de todo.
Lo vamos a llevar a Miami.
Le entregamos los tickets y ustedes entran en el momento que quieran. Si quieren tirarse las fotos afuera, lo pueden hacer. Si quieren caminar, si quieren acostarse en la acera.
Wow.
A la entrada del baño, recuerden que hay asiento para los que no tomaron el lunch. Ahora lo pueden hacer con el momento que deseen. Ya llegamos a Holy Land, este lugar maravilloso. Está enclavado aquí en la ciudad de Orlando.
Es que necesitamos hacer unos anuncios. Si pueden agarrar uno y pasarlo para atrás sería buenísimo. Y si pueden compartirlos por ahora sería ideal. Ok. Tenemos más al entrar también. Ok. Ahora, mientras están pasando esos para atrás, si su líder les está repartiendo sus boletos, asegúrense de mantener ese boleto en un lugar donde no se les vaya a perder. Lo necesitan para entrar al parque. Okay. Si miran hacia su mano derecha van a ver allá la entrada, que es como, parece como un tipo castillo, una entrada así como un castillo. Okay. Esa es la entrada principal del parque, que se llama Jerusalem City Gate, okay, o la entrada de Jerusalén. Okay. Muy importante. East Gate es una réplica de la entrada East Gate de Jerusalén. Okay. Muy importante. Ahora, aquí es donde el bus los va a dejar al final del día. Okay. El bus recoge en una área completamente diferente, que es el número 41 en el mapa. Okay. Entonces, si miran su mapa, los que ya tienen su mapa, es el número 41.
El número 41.
Ahora mismo estamos en el número 5 en el mapa, que está hacia la mano derecha abajo.
¿Tienes más mapas?
Sí, podemos conseguir más. ¿Cuántos más? Okay. Si tienen mapas extras pueden pasarlos para atrás.
¿En qué número?
Aquí hay unos también.
¿Qué número?
Ahora mismo estamos en el número 5. Si miran hacia la mano derecha, hacia abajo, está el número 5.
¿Dónde hacen la crucifixión? ¿Qué número es?
Sí, eso lo vamos a cubrir ahora detalladamente.
Ah, ok, disculpe.
Okay. Ahora mismo estamos en el número 5, que es donde van a entrar, ¿verdad?
No, estoy mirando
Ahora,
acá.
la presentación del drama, okay, de la Pasión de Cristo, es en el número 33 en el mapa.
Estoy mirando el
Que es
33
el coliseo,
precisamente.
parece un coliseo redondo, está hacia la parte de arriba del mapa, el número 33. ¿Ok?
Sí.
Muy importante. Esa presentación empieza a las 4 de la tarde. ¿Ok? Nosotros, hoy es un día súper lleno. ¿Ok? El parque está lleno, pero hay suficiente espacio para esa presentación. Todo el mundo quiere ver la Pasión de Cristo, es la presentación principal del día. ¿Ok? Es el cierre final del día. presentación muy importante, asegúrense de verla, aconsejamos que los grupos estén ahí 15 a 20 minutos temprano. Ok, ahora lo que sí pedimos es su colaboración y su paciencia. Ok, es como un momento de como 10 minutos, ¿verdad? Donde se pone un poquito caliente la cosa ahí, ¿verdad? Porque tenemos líneas, ¿verdad? Esperando mientras que el show antes de la pasión sale, ¿verdad? Desalojamos el edificio completo, entonces ya entra la gente que está esperando en la línea para la pasión, ¿ok? Por eso pedimos que estén ahí 15 minutos, 20 minutos temprano, porque hacemos esa línea, ¿ok? También les pido, ¿verdad?, que no vayan a dejar cámaras, cosas personales, carteras dentro del edificio. A veces las personas dejan cosas dentro del edificio mientras está la presentación y van al baño y dejan sus cosas. No dejen sus cosas, ¿ok? Porque hay mucho fluir de gente allí, ¿ok? ¿Ok? Entonces recomiendo que por favor lleven sus cosas personales.
Over here. The city is about 2/3 of a mile wide, so it's approximately, well, it's just under a square mile in size. And there's about 90,000 people living within the city walls at that time. It was fantastically crowded in Jerusalem at that time. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We're going to start our tour right over here in this little area, the city. This area was known as the City of David, or the Old City. It was named that because this was the extent of the city of Jerusalem at the time that King David took the city from the Jebusites. He wanted it for the capital after he was crowned king for the nation of Israel for a couple of reasons. The first is that the city of Jerusalem was ridiculously easy to defend. You had a valley right along here, running along the west of the city. You had a valley that ran along the eastern or the southern side of the city, and a valley that ran along the eastern side of the city, which made it nearly impossible to attack from those directions. You had to come at the city from the north. So it was very, very easy to defend. So that's the first reason he wants this city. The second reason that he wants the city is that it's along several major trade routes, which would have been great for the economy for the city of Jerusalem at that time. When he brings his armies against the Jebusites, the king of the Jebusites actually put the cripples and the sick people from his army up on the walls because he was trying to send a message to King David that there was no way he was going to be able to take the city. They would simply close up the gates and hold him off until he got bored and went away. David knew a little bit about the city because he had grown up about 6 miles south of here in the city of Bethlehem. And so he knew a couple things about Jerusalem and the city itself. He knew that its source of water was right outside the gate here in the Gihon Spring, just right over here. And that spring provided water for the people. But it was outside the city walls. If the city was under siege, people needed to be able to get to the water without going outside of the city walls. So they created a way to do that. They dug a well from the inside of the city down into the Gihon Spring so that if an army was attacking, they would be able to draw water and not have to go outside the city gates. Well, David knew about all this, so he got his mighty men together. They climbed down into the Gihon spring, found their way to that well, climbed up through the wall, attacked the city from the inside, threw open the gates of the city. The army came in, and they were able to overwhelm the city in that way. All that happened right around 1000 BC. I'm trying to fix the popping in this microphone. There we go. All right. Right here, this red roof building. Technical difficulties today. The red roof building right there. Now there were giants in the land, so here I am. This one right here, I am to scale. This building right over here was the synagogue in the city of Jerusalem. Synagogue worship came into prominence amongst the Jewish people during the Babylonian captivity of 586 BC. With the temple having been destroyed in that year, the Jewish people needed a center of worship, and so they began to congregate in these synagogues. They had rabbis that would read the law of Moses to them. They would expound the law to them in a sermon. They would lead their congregations in hymns and different prayers that were sung. It was actually quite similar to our church services today. The synagogue during the Babylonian captivity became the center of social and spiritual life for the Jewish people. It was certainly the center of social and spiritual life at the time of Jesus, and remains so to this day. This building here was known as the council house, or the house of ruling, right here in front of me. That was a place where the scribes and the Pharisees and the lawyers and the priests would all get together, and they studied the law of Moses. And in the Old Testament, the first 5 books of the Bible, God gave Moses 613 commands for the Jewish people to follow up on Mount Sinai. I'm okay, I'm good, thank you, I appreciate it. During that time, those 613 commands, over the thousands of years and the millennia that progressed after that, the Jewish people began to study and look at those laws, and they began to try to define exactly what each law meant. The Bible says that no work is to be done on the Sabbath. Well, what's work? Well, you can walk 100 feet on the Sabbath. You can carry 2.5 pounds on the Sabbath. And they began to define these things. Well, over time, those things got added to the law of Moses, has laws of their own, until the law of Moses consisted of thousands upon thousands of additional laws that had been added by the people over the centuries. Until by the time of Jesus, the law of Moses became a document that was so complex and so lengthy that most people didn't have a clue what was in it. It's a little bit like our tax code today. Everybody just kind of did their best with it and hoped, that they did the right thing. So the Pharisees and the Sadducees and so forth would come here, and they would debate and discuss the law of Moses. And if I were coming to the temple and I needed to know what kind of animal I needed to sacrifice, or needed some advice on some point of the law, I could come here and get legal advice on the law of Moses. Right over here, this building was the mikvah. The mikvah was a ceremonial bathhouse. There was slabs of granite underneath that had baths carved out of them that were filled with water. There were various things in everyday Jewish life that could cause you to become ceremonially unclean. If you came across a dead body or ran across a certain kind of insect, it would disqualify you from entering into the temple. So you could come to the mikvah, participate in a ceremonial bathing ceremony, and then you could go into the temple area. Right here, this whole big complex here was the temple complex. What you see right here is not Solomon's temple, however. This is Herod's temple. Solomon's temple was destroyed when the Babylonians attacked in 586 BC. They took the Jewish people into captivity. 70 years later, the Jewish people are able to return to the promised land under the leadership of a man by the name of Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel makes it a priority to rebuild the temple, and he does so. He sends men out there, they rebuild the temple. They even use some of the blocks from Solomon's temple that had been carved out for Solomon's temple in Zerubbabel's temple. However, the temple that Zerubbabel built was much smaller, and it was grossly inferior to Solomon's temple. So much so that the Bible says that when some of the older Jews came back from Babylon and they saw Zerubbabel's temple, they actually sat down and wept, because they remembered the splendor of Solomon's temple, and Zerubbabel's temple just wasn't even close. Nevertheless, it was functioning, and the people worshipped there for 400 years until the time of King Herod the Great. Now, King Herod the Great was a king over Israel just before the time of Jesus. He was appointed by right. And because of that, the Jewish people didn't like him very much. The Jewish people wanted a Jewish king to rule over them. They didn't want a foreign power appointing kings over them. And so they didn't much like him because he wasn't Jewish. The other reason they didn't much like him was because the man was a tyrant. This is the Herod the Great that ordered the death of all the babies ages 2 and under in Bethlehem when he heard that Jesus was born. The reason he did that is because Herod spent his entire life being scared to death that people were trying to steal the throne from him. And so when he gets word of a king that was born in Bethlehem, he wants to take care of that before that king ever has a chance to even grow up. The people don't like him. He's not a particularly good king, but he's a very, very good architect. In fact, that's why we know him as Herod the Great, was his building skills. And so to sort of make peace with the Jewish people and at least get them to not riot on him, he decides that he's going to refurbish Zerubbabel's temple. He builds up the temple, he expands it, he beautifies it, does all this golden overlay that you see here. He built all these outer courts around here, these porticos. It was a massive undertaking that wasn't completed in his lifetime. It wasn't even completed in the lifetime of Christ. This temple complex was not completed in its entirety until 64 AD. And then it was destroyed 6 years later in 70 AD by the Romans, putting down a revolt in Jerusalem. This outer court here was known as the court of the Gentiles because anybody, whether you were Jewish or Gentile, male or female, you could come into the court of the Gentiles, so long as you weren't trying to disrupt what was going on in the temple area. You could come into this area. People would often discuss the politics and news of the day. They would come here to discuss theology. The rabbis sometimes came here to teach during the week. It was just a general meeting place for the people. Further in here in this inner court, this was known as the court of the women or the court of the treasury. It was known as the court of the women because women could come into this area as long as they were Jewish women and men. Gentiles were not allowed in this area. It was also known as the court of the treasury because these little treasury boxes that are here inside this court. Now, the purpose of those boxes was to give people the opportunity to give offerings if they wanted to. And those boxes were square in shape, and the top opened up like the bell of a trumpet. And so very often, if a wealthy Jewish person wanted to give an offering, they would walk up into the temple, court of the treasury. They would walk up to one of these boxes, reach into their robes and pull out a nice big handful of coins and throw them down into that box just as hard as they could to make a nice loud clattering noise so that everybody in the area would turn around and look at them and recognize what a wonderful person they were, giving a large offering to the temple. This the people called sounding your trumpets before you, which is what Jesus was referring to when he said that the Pharisees loved to go into the temple sounding their trumpets before them. If you were a man presenting an animal to the priests for the sacrifice, you could come up the 15 stairs of ascent right here through the Nicanor gate into what was known as the court of the priests, or the court of Israel. This was where the priests did the vast majority of their work. They accepted animals to the sacrifice there. They inspected those animals, made sure that they were kosher and so on. They slaughtered the animals in that area. Right over here we have the altar. That altar was massive. It was 45 feet square and 15 feet tall. It would not have fit in the room that we're standing in. It was huge. Behind there, you have the laver. That laver held about 17,000 gallons of water. Now, to give you some perspective on how much water that is, that's about the amount of water you'll find in a typical residential swimming pool here in Central Florida. It was propped up on pedestals and had spigots at the bottom so you could open it up and get the water out to wash your hands or your feet, whatever was required at that moment. And you could turn it off to stop the water. At the end of the day, whatever water hadn't been used by the priests washing throughout the day was drained off, and they had to refill that every single day. And they didn't have running water, so it wasn't as easy as turning on the faucet or the hose and refilling it again. You had to do it by hand. Inside the temple building itself, you had two main rooms. The first room was known as the holy place. There were three pieces of furniture in there. There was the menorah, the golden lampstand. There was the table of showbread that had the 12 loaves of bread representing the 12 tribes of Israel. And there was the golden altar of incense that continuously had incense offered up to the Lord. Separating that room from the Holy of Holies was a large veil. And the high priest, once a year, on the day of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, went into the Holy of Holies to make atonement for the people. Now, when he went into that area in Herod's temple, he found an empty room. The Ark of the Covenant was not present in Herod's temple, nor was it present in Zerubbabel's temple. In 586 BC, when the Babylonians came in and destroyed Solomon's temple, the priests were able to get into the Holy of Holies. They took the Ark of the Covenant out of there, and they hid it. They hid it so well nobody's seen it since. It disappears out of the biblical record. The Bible doesn't say a word about it after the reign of King Solomon. It disappears out of any other record that we have from antiquity. Nobody has seen it. Nobody really knows what's happened to it. That doesn't mean that people haven't come up with a lot of really fantastic ideas about where it's at, who's got it, and what it's doing. Okay? But as much as I'd like to go into some of those theories, I don't have the time. But I am told that you can contact a gentleman by the name of Indiana Jones, and he has more information. Apparently it's in a warehouse in D.C. or something. Anyway, right over here to the north of the temple complex, we have the fortress of Antonia, which was a garrison for Roman soldiers that was built by Herod the Great. You'll notice that it's on the northern end of the city, and the reason that it's on the northern end of the city is because, again, the city can still only be attacked from the north. Yes, there was this valley here that is now inside the city, but further to the west there was another valley that butted up against the walls of the city. So they built it to the north because if you've got an army coming against you, you want your troops to be as close as possible to where the threat's going to be. It's also situated in such a way that the soldiers can kind of keep an eye on what's going on inside the temple area. Why do they care? Because if a revolt's going to happen, if there's going to be a riot that starts, it's going to be in this area. Remember that people come to the court of the Gentiles to discuss politics and so forth, and the hot topic of the day was, what are we going to do about these Romans? And so the Romans just kind of wanted a presence to say, listen, we're paying attention, don't try anything funny. There was a gate from the fortress of Antonia directly into the court of the Gentiles in case they did need to put down the wall. Right out here to the north of the city, at the time of Jesus, it would have been outside of the city. Young lady there, can you point to that hill with the sheep on it? Right there, right there. That's exactly right there. This was the sheep market. This was a place you could come out and buy animals for the sacrifice. Now, to fully understand what's going on at the sheep market, you have to understand what the priests are doing in the court of the Gentiles. Many, many people who come to worship at the temple came from great distances. And you can't always bring all the animals that you need to sacrifice all that way. So the priest said, well, you know what we'll do? We'll make this easy for people. We'll go ahead and set up a market for the sacrifices here in the court of the Gentiles. And then people can just come and buy them. And that's not a problem. There's nothing in the law that forbids that. That's okay. Not a big deal. Only the priests had decided that you couldn't use your regular Roman money in the temple area because Roman money typically had pagan gods stamped on it. Well, that would constitute idols in the temple area, and you can't have that. That's a direct violation of the law of God. And so they began to mint their own money that they called temple shekels. So if I were a worshiper that was coming from Beersheba in the south or somewhere else, I would come up to the temple, and then my first stop would be at the money changers table, where I would get temple shekels for my Roman money. And I would find that they were charging a ridiculously inflated exchange rate for that money. But I'm a good Jewish man, and I want to offer the sacrifices that are required of me of the law, so I deal with that. And I trade in my money, and I get my temple shekels. And then I go to the merchants to buy the lamb or the turtle dove or the French hens or whatever it was that I needed for the sacrifice, and I'd buy the animal. But when I got to that merchant, I found that he too had inflated his prices greatly because he's in the temple there. It was kind of like if you go over to Disney World and you try to buy a camera there in the park, you're going to pay 4 times as much as you need to. That's what the priests were doing in here. This is why Jesus comes into the temple twice during his ministry and clears the place out and accuses the priests of turning the house of God into a den of thieves. They were literally robbing honest Jewish men who simply wanted to uphold the law and worship the way that God asked them to. They were robbing them twice, every single time, when they exchanged their money and when they bought the animal. There's another reason why the priests didn't much care for Jesus, because he went in and tried to disrupt their income, and it was very lucrative for the priests. They were able to live in the wealthy part of town, over here in Mount Zion with the nice big 2-story houses, instead of living in the poorer areas of town down in the valley. And you could do all that if you wanted to, and oftentimes people who had never been to Jerusalem before did. You only made that mistake once. Or you could come out here to the sheep market. Now, the sheep market had a couple of advantages over buying in the temple area. The first is that I'm not in the temple grounds, so I can use my Roman money. I don't have to deal with the exchange rate. The second thing is that the prices out here are lower than they are in the temple. They always had low prices at the sheep market. It was like Walmart for temple sacrifice. Did you hear, by the way, that Walmart's pulling all of its stores out of the Middle East? There's something about them all being targets anyway. You guys are encouraging me. They only get worse. Okay, so they're to the north of the city. promise I won't tell any more jokes. To the north of the city, there's two possible locations for the crucifixion of Jesus. One is right here, right on the other side of this tower. My pointer's not working. Again, it's this little hill right over here, just on the other side of the wall. Right there. There we go. This is known as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre site. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre site is the more traditional location. Lots of churches hold to that spot. Right over here, we have Gordon's Calvary. This is the second location that is a possible location for the crucifixion of Jesus. Now look, both of these spots have their archaeological and historical merits for believing that that's the place where Jesus was crucified. Some churches hold to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre site, some hold to Gordon's Calvary. I'm not going to get into all the details of that debate because it doesn't matter. What matters is that Jesus was crucified, and that their crucifixion satisfied the law and allowed for the redemption of my sins. Right over here on the western side of the city, up here on Mount Zion, we have Herod's temple. Herod's temple was a beautiful, it's not a temple, it's a palace. Technical stuff. The palace here, it was a beautiful, beautiful palace. But Herod was a fantastic architect. He loved to build things. He had palaces all over Israel. This one actually looked like a Motel 6 compared to several of the other palaces that he had built throughout the land. Now you'll notice that on the northern end of his house over there, he's got 3 towers that would have been full of guards at all times to make sure that nobody's going to attack his part of the city. He's got 1 garrison over here to protect 90,000 people. He's got 3 towers over here to protect him. Because he's scared to death that somebody's trying to take him out. He had several wives. Ladies, you didn't want to marry Herod the Great. He had every last one of his wives executed because he thought they were conspiring with his sons to take the throne from him. He had most of his sons killed for the same reason. He was not a pleasant man. The people didn't like him, and he knew it. He knew when he came to the end of his life that there was not going to be any mourning for him when he was gone. In fact, people were probably going to throw parties. They were going to be so happy that he was gone. And he didn't want that. He wanted people to mourn. So this was his solution to the problem. He sends his soldiers out into the surrounding countryside. They arrest and detain 70 of the most prominent, beloved, and respected rabbis from the area, and they place them under arrest here at the Hippodrome, which is the sporting arena right here. He gives his men orders that when they receive word of his death, that those 70 men are to be put to death as well. Why? Because he wants to ensure that the city of Jerusalem mourns when he dies instead of rejoices, even though they're not mourning for him. Now his soldiers loved and respected him so much in his final wishes that when they heard of his death, they released those 70 men instead of putting them to death. Everybody liked this Herod guy. A little sarcasm for your day. All right. I want you to come as close as you can to the model, but don't reach in and touch anything. But go ahead and get as close as you can. I want you to take a good look at these houses. Now, the first thing you'll notice about these houses is that in most parts of the city, the houses are really, really close to each other. Because remember, there's 90,000 people living in the city at this time. Okay? They're very, very close together. They're so close together that in some parts of town, you can actually move through town without going down to the streets. You could just go from rooftop to rooftop. It was that easy. Now, you'll also notice that there's baskets of fruit and tables and things up there and mats for sleeping on. The reason for that is that these houses got really hot during the day there in the Middle East. And so, when the evening rolled around and you got a cool breeze blowing through the city, people would often take their evening meal up onto the rooftop to eat, take advantage of the cool breeze. Sometimes when the weather was particularly nice, they'd sleep up there or even bathe up there, which incidentally is what Bathsheba was doing. It was a common thing for people to bathe on their rooftops. She wasn't doing anything particularly unusual for her time. So people get up on the rooftops for the evening meal. And as you can imagine, when the Smiths are going up to their, roof with their brisket, and the Joneses are coming up with their gefilte fish, I guess, I don't know what they ate back then, they would start to talk to each other over their evening meals. Kind of like we do here in the South when we're sipping sweet tea on our porches. They start talking to each other and telling the news and the gossip of the day back and forth. And so the news and the gossip of the day literally was shouted from rooftop to rooftop and would spread through town. Kind of like Facebook. Without those ridiculous cat pictures. Oh, we've got cat picture lovers. Oh. All right. So when Jesus tells his disciples that he wants them to shout the good news of the gospel from the rooftop, it's something that very easily could have been done back then. Now look, I'm not suggesting that we all go home after we're done here today, get up on our rooftops and start shouting at our neighbors. You'll have red and blue lights on your lawn before you know what to do with yourself, okay? What I am suggesting is that Jesus still wants us to take every opportunity and use every tool that's available to us to spread the gospel to as many people as possible, as long as we're on this earth. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation of the Jerusalem model. I do encourage you to take advantage of our posters of the model right over here that we have for sale. They go into a great deal more detail than I did. They're an excellent resource for Sunday school classrooms or home Bible study. God bless you all. Thanks for joining us here today, and shalom.
Ya lo ahí la letrera, Monte los Olivos. Mira ahí al fondo, ven. Pray for them, that you will not be overcome by temptation.
Miren, siempre cuando vamos de regreso a Miami, recogemos a las personas interesadas en los próximos destinos. A modo de que ya se vayan planificando, cuando la emisora los comience a llamar, sin ningún compromiso, siempre lo digo. Cuando la emisora los llame, si ustedes no pueden ir, tienen algún compromiso familiar o de trabajo, le dicen que no pueden y no hay ningún tipo de problema. Pero si cuando la poderosa los llama, ustedes están listos para ir, pagan y ya tienen su lugar en el autobús. El próximo destino va a ser el 17 de enero. Vamos a estar viajando a la ciudad griega de Tarpon Springs. Es una ciudad muy pintoresca que está en la costa oeste de la Florida. Ese viaje tiene desayuno, almuerzo en un restaurante griego. Vamos a dar un paseo en barco por el litoral de esa ciudad para ver cómo se pescaban las esponjas a principios del siglo pasado en esa ciudad de Tarpon Springs. Vamos a ir a la Catedral Ortodoxa San Nicolás Gris para ver la influencia bizantina en su arquitectura. Visitaremos también el acuario que tiene 120.000 galones de agua con tiburones incluidos y un arrecife de coral vivo. Y caminaremos por su downtown, que está lleno de tiendas, comercios, y donde ustedes tendrán la oportunidad de comprar los jabones de olor hechos a mano por los griegos, las esponjas, y disfrutar de la exquisita repostería griega en los bakeries. Ese viaje va a ser el sábado 17 de enero, tiene un costo de $99 con todo lo que anteriormente les dije incluido. Entonces, lo otro es que voy a pasar también recogiendo los interesados para la lista de espera del viaje a San Agustín de la próxima semana, que hay algunas personas que están interesadas. Eso va a ser $198, son 2 días, tiene desayuno, almuerzo, cena.
¿Van a ir a San Agustín o no?
Desayuno, almuerzo el domingo. Vamos a ir al Fuerte Matanzas, a un recorrido por la ciudad para ver la arquitectura de estilo colonial español. Vamos a dar un paseo por la calle San George, que está lleno de tiendas, comercios en muchos lugares de interés, y donde está la primera escuelita que fue fundada en los Estados Unidos. El domingo vamos a ir al Viñedo San Sebastián, visitar la Fuente de la Juventud y dar un paseo en barco por todo el litoral para desde el mismo ver el castillo de San Marcos, el Puente de los Leones y el faro de esa ciudad de San Agustín. Ese viaje va a ser el 13 y 14 de diciembre, la próxima semana. Son $198 con todo lo que anteriormente les he incluido. Voy a pasar para tomar las personas interesadas en ese destino. Si fallan algunas personas, porque el autobús ya está completamente lleno. Siempre hay fallo, y entonces si hay una opción se pueden ir con nosotros a esta excursión. Si no, quedarían pendientes para la próxima vez que vamos a San Agustín, que durante el año viajamos en varias ocasiones. Ahora voy a pasar para tomar los interesados en uno u otro destino. Recuerden, el 17 de enero va a ser Tarpon Springs, la ciudad griega, por $99, y el 13 y 14 de diciembre la lista de espera de la ciudad de San Agustín por tan solo $198.